Hello, everyone. Welcome to this online series of Ramayana, a journey towards human potential. Before we begin, I would like to speak a little bit of the source of this information. None of this information belongs to me, and Ramayana, which has been written by the great Maharshi Valmiki, has been studied by great scholars throughout the generations. Through my dialogues with some of these great spiritual seekers, videos, discourses, books, and a little bit of introspection with whatever intellect God has given me, I have compiled this and I present this in front of you. Please expect inaccuracies, deviations from what you know to be the story as we go through Valmiki Ramayana from the text which has been passed on as an oral tradition and later has been taken into a book form once the printing era started. So, without further ado, let's jump into the story. So, this is session one. In session one, before we get into the thick of things, for every story, in order to appreciate the story in the best possible manner, there is a setting of a context, right? When did the story happen? What was the world like about this story? Um, so let us do that first. Let's try to set a context over here. As we all know, the way science looks at time, we measure the universe from the Big Bang, which started 13.8 billion years ago. And through complex evolution, life has started. We are not sure how big the universe is. We are not sure if life is there elsewhere. But we do know that this has all happened due to evolution and energy manifesting into various matter, chemical reaction, and so on. Another perspective of time, which is popular in Sanatana Dharma, uh, in the ancient days, where Vedas were very popular, we obviously have to go to that context because Ramayana belongs to that period and Ramayana belongs to that lineage of rishis who have compiled these Vedas, and Valmiki being one of them. So, from a perspective of from this lens, time is not looked in as a start and an end point. So here, time is infinite, and time is a cycle. So this is a continuous infinite cycle of four yugas repeating again and again and again. So you have a Satya Yuga followed by a Treta Yuga, followed by a Dwapar Yuga and a Kali Yuga. And then again it goes back to Satya Yuga and so on and so on. So there is no end to this. So there are many uh, different notions about how long each yuga is and how many years it is. So there are deviations, and I personally do not know what is the right one. But it is important to remember that we are going to look at this story in this setting, in this context. And Ramayana is said to have happened in the Treta Yuga. So if we look at the most popular notion, it definitely happened more than a thousand years ago. So definitely beats recorded human civilization when you look at it from a scientific point of view. So perhaps a lot of theories that we know today would have to be thrown out of the window when we look at this story. Let's start looking at this story purely as a story because we are not here to be judgmental, but we are here to really appreciate this amazing book. Um, all right. So another important context about the Treta Yuga specifically. Please do concentrate on this. So, the lifespan of every human being in this yuga is on an average 10,000 years. We will find people in this story who have lived for more than 10,000 years as well. Even their anatomy is very different. They are almost more than 10 feet tall. So, all these things are good to keep in our minds as we enter this magical uh, period where this story occurs. So, very close to the when, obviously, is also the where. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, where did this story happen? Did it happen in India as we know today? Um, Not exactly sure because we are talking about so many thousands and thousands of years ago. Um, and as we all know, tectonic plate movement keeps happening on the planet. And in this story, and as far as the lineage of Vedas, okay, there is not just one world, but there are so many worlds. They call them lokas. This is a very interesting concept. Uh, so as you can see, I've tried to put a table here of the different lokas that are out there. So Bhuloka, which is what is referred to as Earth, there are six above and seven below this world that we are living in. So in this story, while the Ramayana is happening on Bhuloka, please we also have to remember that there are other lokas from where people would be jumping in and out. Loka in Sanskrit and in Vedas did not just mean a place, a physical place, but it was also a place of. It was also considered as a realm of consciousness, and that's a very different way of looking at it. And different species with different levels of consciousness were living in different lokas, and that was another way in which rishis looked at it. So we will see people who are able to jump realms uh, in the story, and this is still a part of the whole context. So we saw uh, the context of when it happened, we saw a context of where it happened, and before we then finally move ahead, let's also look at uh, Valmiki, right? We call Valmiki as Valmiki Maharshi. So let's understand this term a little bit more because it will help us uh, appreciate what he's saying. So, who is a rishi? Rishi, as we call them as sages or great yogis, they're basically people who, after intense meditation, they have realized the supreme truth or the eternal knowledge. So, basically, they are sitting down there, and the entire universe is rendering to themselves. Whatever knowledge they seek is coming to them, and they're composing this into a sound form. They're converting that energy into a sound form, and that sounds is what we refer to as Vedas. So there are various types of rishis. So from rishi, the basic, to then there is the rajashi. Rajashi is the base form of a rishi. There are rishis who are also kings. So they are kings who are ruling, but they have also attained a level of self-realization. They are not attached to their kingdom or riches. Once they reach a certain age, they're able to leave everything to their children and go to the forests because for spiritual seeking. So this level of detachment and peace within their hearts, they are called Rajarshis. Maharshis are uh, they are middle class of rishis. I mean, please don't understand this as low and middle in a typical way. This is just text is picked from wiki and few other sources. So when you explain in English, it comes out that way. But it is a higher level of perfection from a Rajarshi to a Maharshi. It's a higher evolution. So Maharshi literally means a great rishi, and they haven't gained full mastery over their senses, but they are very close to realizing the actual consciousness. So Valmiki, our beloved author, is a Maharshi. We bow down to this great personality. And Brahmarshis, so all Maharshis are striving to become Brahmarshis. Brahmarshis have attained complete 100% mastery over their senses and passions. They are flawless. It's even said that they can see time flow, the past, present, and future, uh, just sitting at a single place. We know the Saptarshis, very famous. Vishwamitra, Vashishta, Kashyapa, Bhrigu, Atri, Angirasa. So Gautama, all these are great Brahmarshis, and many of them, luckily, we would be touching and learning about them as this story proceeds. Devarshis are rishis who aren't any of these. They have attained immortality, and they are the ones who are able to move from one realm to another, one loka to another seamlessly. So Narada is one very famous Devarshi that we all know of. And then apart from the rishis, you have humans, um, not the uh, not from a Homo sapien kind of a point of view, but humans who are you know not in the bucket of rishis. Then there are devatas, and then there are asuras. All these people, all these four classes of people, they all have the same rules. The rule of a life cycle, which is also very important to understand in the context. So in the context of Sanatana Dharma, whether you are an Asura or a Deva or a human being or a Rishi, whoever you are, you're going to lead a certain life. And after that, depending on certain aspects, your next life will or will not be there. And if it is, then what that life is going to be. So life actually goes, the soul transports itself from one life form to another life form. It's an infinite cycle, and few people actually know how to break this cycle. So even devatas become human beings become animals, animals become asuras, asuras become rishis. So a lot of these stories are available, uh, and we get to see them in the various Puranas. So I think with this, we have established quite a good context about uh, the story of Ramayana. And now we can actually get into the story. But before we do, one last thing. Uh, every Purana, every epic of the past, which especially has reference in the Vedas, it has three threads. One is the story, which just happens, like the sequence of events. For each event, there is a backstory. Why is this happening this way? So we will be touching upon some of the interesting backstories which help us in our cause of spiritual seeking and allow us to introspect and really experience some very good moments of bliss and happiness. And there are some underlying truths that are hidden within the story, which the rishis unlock for us in their books, and also the great thinkers who have come later on have added their gems of knowledge. So every aspect of the story has these three threads. And to give you a simple example, I have put up this picture here of Lord Vishnu. This is a very famous picture of Lord Vishnu seated on the serpent bed, and Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi, is at his feet. And so, what is this picture? What is the underlying truth behind this picture? The underlying truth here is that if you look at Lord Vishnu himself, he has goddess Lakshmi at his feet, which is a symbolism of saying all the riches, all the riches are at his disposal. But is he looking at her, or is he looking at wealth? No, he's not looking at wealth. He's sleeping on a serpent, which is a symbolism for death. Is he worried about it? Is he looking at the serpent? No, he isn't. And obviously, you all know his vehicle is the Garuda, the mighty bird. It's always waiting at the door, asking him that bird could take him wherever he wants. Is he interested in traveling? No. You have Lord Brahma and all the other devatas constantly worshipping him and singing praises about him. But he's not looking at them either. He's not looking at wealth. He's not looking at death. He's not looking at uh, travel. He's not looking at people who are praising him. So, what is he doing? He's in a half sleep, half meditative state. And the The idea behind this depiction of Lord Vishnu is to remind each of us that this is how we should also try to put ourselves in this zone where we respect wealth, we respect people who like us, we respect people who are helping us, we respect that there is death coming up, but our focus is not on that. Our focus is within ourselves, always looking at what is that moment, uh, what is that spark within, and that seeking for higher consciousness. So, this picture, uh, this entire depiction of Vaikuntha, each and every element is actually the hidden meaning behind that is to remind every human of how they should put their mind into action. So, that's a small example of what is the story and what is the underlying Tatvika Rahasyam, right? So, just a small example. So, even Ramayana, many incidents in Ramayana move in this similar fashion, where there is the actual thread, but then there is an underlying meaning to it. So, wherever possible, we will touch upon those aspects as well. All right. So, okay. So, before the story began, Valmiki, as we already spoke, Valmiki is a Maharshi and he's in his ashram. And back those days, the Gurukul system was very active. So all these Maharshis had many disciples, students who were sent by the parents to live with these great gurus and learn from them various aspects of life. So Valmiki also had an ashram with a lot of people. So one day, uh, as he was in his ashram teaching students, uh, Narada comes and visits him. So as we already spoke, Narada is a is a enlightened and immortal being. He's like a Brahmarshi and beyond. So Valmiki is very excited because this is an aspirational idol in front of him. So he asks him to sit down. He uh, does the required things, washes his feet, offers him some food and water, and Valmiki's ashram is nearby Tapasi river. It's a beautiful, serene place, a very peaceful forest. And now, in this setting, a discussion starts between the two, and Valmiki poses a question, right? And it is this question that led to the birth of Ramayana, the book that Valmiki wrote. So the question that Valmiki asks Narada is, who is who? Can you tell me if there is a person who lived in this world, a human being with the right qualities, right? Righteousness, gratitude, truthfulness, as described as in the Vedas. Someone who is so self restrained, who has conquered anger, jealousy, who is free from envy, and he's always worried about the well being of all the living creatures, and he has knowledge of everything that is to be known, and he's capable of doing everything in a singular manner. So he said, Narada, it is my intention to hear about such a man. It is my great curiosity to know if there is anyone indeed like this. And with this question, uh, Narada replied to Valmiki by telling the story of Rama. So, Ram, I come from South India, so popularly my mind looks at him as, calls him, refers to this person as Rama, but Ram is the same. So, so Narada described the entire Ramayana story to Valmiki in a very brief manner, right? The basic plot that we are all aware of, Rama being born and the four brothers and Sita Swayamvar and Ravana and the kidnap and the Hanuman and the fight and the victory and all that. So the entire story, and Valmiki was so amazed and intrigued. Probably in an hour and a half, Narada has described the story in a very brief manner. But Valmiki was very intrigued about this, and it started a deep desire within himself to know more about this fascinating human being, right? And Valmiki once again worshipped Narada in a befitting manner, and after that, Narada bid a goodbye and he left to Devaloka. And Valmiki reached back to the next day. He went back to the Tapsa river for a morning bath, and along with him, his disciple Bharadwaja was also there. He saw that river was so calm and peaceful. He said, "This river is as holy and as peaceful as the mind of a virtuous man." And even looking at that river and that still water, his mind was again going back to Rama and that story. So he was completely absorbed within that story. And right then, an incident happens. A hunter uh, shoots down one of the birds sitting on a branch playing with another bird. And suddenly, the peaceful setup is disturbed by a bird crying and blood and all that. So, in a fit of anger, Valmiki kind of utters some words as if to curse the hunter or scold the hunter, and in a reaction to the grief of that bird. And which was very, he felt very surprised, because as a Maharshi, he's not supposed to, Hunter is doing whatever his daily routine. And as a Maharshi, he's not supposed to react to this. But he had a very strong reaction, Manisa the Pratishta, Tvagmagasa. So the entire sloka that you see on the screen. So later he came back to the ashram, but these two lines were not leaving his mind, and he didn't understand. And somehow he fell in love with these lines. He felt that every syllable was perfectly tuned. It felt as if it was a song. And today, when we look back, these two lines are referred to as the first sloka of Ramayana, which is also called as the first. Um, uh, Valmiki is also called as the Adi Kavi, which means he's the first poet. And if he's the first poet, this is the first poem that was ever written. So, and it had a nice tune to it, but he was intrigued because he just scolded a hunter on how dare you hit this bird, and words that came out of his mouth, they were words that he had never used before. And with this uh, confusion in his mind, he came back to the ashram. And then the incident happens, which actually made Ramayana possible. As soon as he came back to the ashram, he was surprised to see Lord Brahma come and visit him at his ashram. He immediately got up, folded palms, and stood in front of him and worshipped him with as per the tradition. And he fell at his feet, offered him a seat, and washed his feet with water. And Lord Brahma sat down. Although sitting at the presence of Lord Brahma, he was still absorbed at the sloka that he had just uttered in the past, and he was constantly thinking about it. And Brahma smiled and he said, Valmiki, what you have spoken just now is actually a sloka, and it is the start of a book that you're about to write about the history of Rama. And he then gave Valmiki a boon that Valmiki, from today onwards, every day when you sit down, uh, you are going to see the entire Ramayana story again happen in front of your eyes. You are going to experience every character. Not only will you be able to see the story, you'll also be able to know what each character was thinking while they were doing their actions. And you will write this down as a huge text which will be called as Ramayana. And it is my blessing that this book will be there for generations to come. And on hearing this, Valmiki was so amazed. And this incident is what made Ramayana possible. This is what allowed Valmiki to re experience the entire story right from the moment it happened. And that is where we end session one. So thank you all for joining. I hope uh, I was able to convey my thoughts in a precise manner. So we've looked at the context and we've looked at how Valmiki Maharshi has attained the power to write Ramayana, because Ramayana has already happened, and now Valmiki is sitting down every morning and he's reliving this story and writing it. So with that, we end session one.